today we began our series on this year's theme of value-based spiritual living. And the theme for the month is diversity and inclusivity. And the thought statement that we're working with is we value, embrace, and celebrate the individual uniqueness and contribution of all people as they express through differences of gender, ethnicity, culture, history, experience, talents, and sexual orientation. And I want to add in whatever else that might be out there. But that's what the theme is all about. And here's a couple of perspectives. Ernest Holmes said very clearly, we are individual entities in a universe which furnishes the background and the foreground for each of us. But each is unique, different but fundamentally alike. We are all unique but fundamentally alike. That sounds like a paradox, right? And a lot of people feel that there is a paradox that exists within them because we have our human nature as well as our spiritual nature. And sometimes there appears to be that warring effort that goes along between the two. I just love that chocolate cake, and Spirit says, and you know you really don't need that. And the reason why Spirit would say that is because I've stood in agreement with, okay, I have to monitor my sugar intake. Not the chocolate intake.
Without sugar, it doesn't taste too good.
Oh, yeah. So I've developed a liking and a love for dark chocolate, and that's good too. So my intake of milk chocolate has switched to a higher intake of dark chocolate. But the point I want to get to is that we do experience sometimes that paradox within ourselves of what is it that the spiritual me wants to do, knows to do, as opposed to what is it that my human nature is definitely going to do. And what we try to do is to actually bring ourselves into a place of congruency and oneness. That's why we have all these affirmations out there. I am one with God. I love pizza. You know, we create these affirmations and statements around what it is that we want to see happen, what it is we want to experience. And I believe, what is it that we are accepting? To have miracles around. How did miracles get into this? Well, many times we don't want to do what we know we need to do by way of a human expression or by way of a spiritual expression. And we say, oh God, just do it for me. So miracles do happen sometimes. Now I know that's a broad, irreverent brush of that. But the point I want to get to is that we do experience these paradoxes in our life. But I want to pose a few questions before you. What is uniqueness? What makes you unique? And then once you're able to be comfortable with your answers of what makes you unique, then tell me, what is it that makes you the same with everyone else? And let me tell you why it's important to say that we are the same. Even though each one of us is a separate entity in the very mind of God, no two people are alike. Science has demonstrated to us that even identical twins who may have the appearance of looking alike are not alike. I can recall looking on some internet stuff and looking in the faces of twins who were supposed to be very, 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 very extremely close in their appearance of being identical. But the more I looked at them, the more I stared and compared the likenesses, the more I was able to see the subtle differences and began to see the difference in the physical appearance. But I have my own personal story around that because my husband was a twin. And yeah, for a long time, those boys were so much alike, you could not tell one from the other. But the other way of being able to tell the difference was in their personality and in their approach to things, how they would approach people. My husband, like me, is serious, very serious, very observant, quiet type. He observes and looks around. And he's not the first one to speak up in a crowd. His brother, on the other hand, he steps into a room where there is a secret. For instance, where the family is planning a surprise party and we're waiting for the person to come through the door. If Floyd was in that room, when that person stepped through the door, he would bust out laughing and everybody would know, oh my God, he's let loose a secret. But he just couldn't help himself. He was filled with so much joy that he just couldn't help himself. Very extroverted, out there, loved people, friends all over the place. A wonderful guy. But what is it that makes identical twins and you the same? What is it that makes triplets all the same? And I think it's our universal nature. It is that which God has created us to be. Ernest Holmes was an avid reader of scripture, of biblical text, sacred text. And of course he read the Bible and Psalms. And in Psalms we find that God says, and you are wonderfully and beautifully and fearfully made. Each one of us. Each one of us. So from that statement, I'm able to say, I'm unique because God has made me beautifully and wonderfully and fearfully. But on the other hand, but Spirit did the same for you, right? So where is it that I see myself as being unique? And I have said this over this pulpit before. Look at my eyebrows. They don't match.
They work fine for you.
I know they work fine. And I experienced, why is it I complain about these? It's because people, humans, have to find something that's wrong with them. But my eyebrows just don't match. And the only way they match is I draw them in. I draw them in so that they look like they match. Sometimes it's a perfect job, sometimes not. But the one thing that really makes us unique, guys, is our personality. That which Floyd Douglas showed me, that which my husband Lloyd Douglas showed me, their personalities were totally different. So what makes you unique is your personality. What makes you the same as me is that we're created in the image and likeness of God. Now, Ernest Holmes, in his article, The Individual and the Universal, made this statement. We individualize the universal, which is God, and universalize the individual. Ancient wisdom teaches us that every person is a microcosm of the macrocosm. A little world within a big world, or an individual within the universal. Jesus said, believe thou not that I am in the Father and the Father in me, the words that I speak to you. I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwells in me. It is He that does the work. So there's no such thing, this is a bold statement, there's no such thing as an individual.
Just an appearance.
Just an appearance. There's no such thing in the mind of God. of an individual, but there's an individualized personality of spirit. Individualized. We do not possess any individual laws. We all use the same spiritual laws, the same physical laws. We use them all. We all use the same laws of mathematics. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same water. We all eat the same substance of food, whether you're vegetarian, vegan, or omnivore. But we all do these same things. All. So we like to say, because we have the appearance of a different skin color, or we have the appearance and the presentation of a different culture, that is what makes us different. But let's look at this experiment. You go into the room of 6 people of color. The very first thing you would see is variation in the color, right? Y'all don't look the same. And that's true of people of the white race, the Caucasian race. They're not all the same color of white. Some are so translucent. Some are pink.
They're trying to get tan.
I know,
What is that?
I know, but the point is, you find a different array of color in that spectrum. The same is true for brown people. The same is true for black people. It's just the way it is. There's diversity in the spectrum. We like to know that every person has the ability to tap into the colors of the rainbow, the colors from the sun. All of us can use them. Every last one of us can go and pick a color to paint our room. All of us. Some of us like the peach, some of us like red, some like brown, green. We can pick whatever color we want and paint our walls. All of us have that ability to do it. But the selection of the color is an individual choice. So that is what diversity is. I know in the social setting of diversity, we like to look at the fact that socially it means acceptance and respect. We accept one another, the person for who they are, the integrity of who that person is, and we also want to learn a bit more about the person without judgment. That is some of the mindset that surrounds the definition of diversity. But do we all see it in that way? Many of us have grown up in sterile environments. And what I mean by a sterile environment, we were not exposed to various cultures of people in our growing up. I remember when I first moved out here to California and I started working in a supervisory capacity, and it was my first meeting of being with the other supervisors in the building. We were having one of the first, diversity workshops that was going on at the time. And I was a little hesitant and I was a little fearful. I didn't know if I could really participate because I didn't want to be sharing all about me. I didn't think anybody would be able to relate to me. But guess what? I found that I was able to relate to others in the room. Now the reason why I tell you why I felt I couldn't relate or would not be able to, because I was the only African American in the room. The only one. But we were broken up into little groups, and as I went into my group, I was not going to be the first one to speak. And the assignment that we had was to share something about ourselves so that we can start learning to know one another. Give what you felt you could give about your background. And then after everybody had spoken, we were supposed to compare notes to see who all had something in common. So one of the women who spoke said how she had this painful childhood because they were so poor. They lived from hand to mouth. Sometimes her mom was able to work, sometimes her mom was not. The father had left the family, and they lived in really poor, very poor conditions. And she talked about having to go to school without having proper clothing and so forth. And I sat there with my mouth slightly open because I thought, I'd never met anybody like that. Really, I really had not. Because even in my growing up on the street where we lived, if somebody didn't have food, they went into my mother's garden, or they went into one of the neighbors' backyards where they had fruit trees and got fruit, so there was always food around. People were getting their needs met through their neighbors, but we didn't hear these stories. And I have to acknowledge that in my growing up, there was always the mother and father in the household. So it was really an eye-opening experience for me to hear that story. And I couldn't show that I was shocked or dumbfounded. I had to hide behind my disbelief. And I'll tell you why. Because this was a white woman who looked like she had had everything given to her. And my aunt, who lived with us, had been a maid in the homes of white people, and it was a matter of, we always saw them as always having. They were the havingness people. Anything, if we had something, they had something bigger and better. They were never without, never had any problems. That was a mindset. But to hear that story, it changed my mindset. And I also began to hear stories of other people in that circle of 5 who shared some other things about their growing up. And as I compared their note with my note of my growing up, I thought, oh my goodness, how blessed I was. So I had some misconceptions. I had some judgments that had to be done away with. And it caused a softening in my heart. It caused a renewing in my mind about what am I supposed to consider when I come in contact with someone new. And it meant that I had to lay aside my preconceived thoughts and ideas and start taking a wait-and-see attitude to find out, will something personal be revealed so I understand better? Now, as we continued in our conversations, I began to see that even though my co-workers were Caucasian, that they were raised with some of the same teachings and sayings that my parents had given to me. One lady, Pat, said, money doesn't grow on trees. My parents said, money doesn't grow on trees. Those common things that happen. But the point I want to get to is that in that experience of really talking, learning to share with one another, we got to know one another. And I began to see an element of diversity. My world began to enlarge. Because even though I was working in a diverse environment, I had not opened the mind to see the diversity that was in front of me. So the point of this story is all of the time we should not just consider, I'm looking at the color of someone's skin out there to say that I'm in a diverse environment. Sometimes we have to go a little bit deeper than that and become aware of what is the real diversity that is present in the room with the people that are here. Some of us have secret passions that we don't just tell people about. I have a desire to jump out of an airplane. I really have a desire
Bungee jumping.
to do bungee jumping and all of that stuff because I love the heights. I love climbing up high. I love being in that place where I can look out and see everything that's there. I love breathing the air. I like that. There are others that love to be low on the ground. But, there are many things that we don't share in every environment that we're part of. But there's a richness of diversity right here in the room. Susan loves music. I love music. She plays. I don't. I bong on a keyboard or a piano.
You sing beautifully.
And I have a desire to play the piano, but yet I don't go do that. Why? But once again, there's the diversity. I look at Beverly and the beautiful stories that you've shared about your life and how your experiences brought you to this place where you just love. You just love. And the one thing, I just keep going back to this. Even when there is an adversity, you said, you just love them. You just love. You just love. And Reverend Allen, I just find it amazing the quiet strength you have. You're very, very powerful. And I appreciate every single simple thing you do. Really do. And I have to tell you why. I have to tell you why. Because you are a life lesson for me. I can recall that I made a decision that I was not going to be in a marital relationship where I was constantly put down. And that meant when arguments and so forth cropped up in my relationships, instead of me working through them, I would just say, oh, I'm out of here, bye. So there is no marriage here, but there is the fact of there's no running away. It's comfortable to stay. It's comfortable to work through. Seriously. 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 I mean, it was like, why am I telling you guys this morning? The Spirit told me to trust. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So as I was sitting there in my seat, I felt this thing in my portfolio and I pulled it out and it was a little affirmation stone. And it said, thank you, it said, that's fine, it says, believe. And I'm like, oh, a message from the universe. Just believe in Spirit to talk about whatever Spirit wants to talk about. So I'm putting it out here on the line because all of that is part of the diversity that exists in this room. And to verbalize it for me is to make it included into who we are. Who we are as a spiritual center. Who we are as a people in relationship to one another. You get to know a little bit more about what I might consider a flaw, but it's really not a flaw. It's just another part of the personality of the individualized expression of Spirit. So, this is how I like to look at diversity. I am not interested in putting down one group and raising up another. I am interested in seeing the expression of Spirit coming through everyone. How is it that we begin to just like people? Why is it that you like people? There's something to really liking people. We learn to love people, but sometimes you just like people. And it has nothing to do with their color. One of my favorite people is someone that I can argue with. If I said the sun was red, the other person would say it's gray. And therein, we were in the debate. But you know something? We really liked one another and we respected each other's opinion. And we would laugh about it after the fact. Like, whoa, you really had me going. But he liked to argue and I liked to argue. And we were in a safe place to argue with one another. And we always left intact and whole. That's part of the diversity of spirit. It's all in the allness of spirit. Spirit individualized as a debater. Yeah. And that's the truth of it. Emerson said that there is one mind common to all individual persons. And in the saying, he reached one of the highest perceptions of the ages. Ernest Holmes says he was not denying the reality of our own being. He was saying, you are because God is. You live because God lives in you. So, you as an individualized being is still connected to God. There's only one mind. That mind is God. That mind is the mind that I'm using now. The words we speak is spirit and life-giving. And we're always dealing with the creative medium, the creative intelligence of the universe. So every time we open our mouths to speak something that is individual and specific to our livingness and what we consider to be our good, we are impressing what? That one same creative medium, that one same creative intelligence. Not a different one, it's the same one. We're all tapping into that one mind that is common to all. So the sum total of our mental and emotional reactions surrounds us with a field of thought, which is operated on by a field of mind, law, and action. We're individualized expressions of the universe. So that I can make it very easy and plain, the universe is another term for God. I know some people may have a problem with that term because of the way it's used. I want to tell you how I use it. The infinite spirit of life. The great all that there is. The good. God. There is good in the universe. It says in the Curtis Hopkins. And we ought to have it. And that good in the universe comes in many forms. It comes as the many individualized beings that are here on earth. It comes in people, places, and things. So, many of us have spent time studying diversity. Many of us have taken actions to include people in our livingness. And it has nothing to do with the color of their skin. We bring people that we work with into our homes so that we socialize and we get to know them and they get to know us a little bit more. We go to shows where we see somebody who does a performance that we love and we support them and we make ourselves available to a myriad of different things, but they all fall in the creative medium, the creative intelligence of spirit that is now expressing in its wonderful multiple ways on this earth. So my call to action for you is to open your eyes that you may see diversity not only in terms of the physical expression of race, color, sexual orientation, and that kind of stuff, but begin to become aware of what is the subtle diversity that's within the people that are in your inner circles. There's more to learn about one another. It's all in spirit. It's all in God. And with that, let's just go within. In this moment, in this place, we recognize that God is all